Hi there. It's great to be with CTIA and to be a part of your annual 5G Summit. A big thank you to Meredith Baker and everyone at CTIA for having me join you. I'm going to start today with a quick story. So roll back in time to 1908. That's when Roald Amundsen of Norway planned an expedition to the North Pole. He got scientists to share their time and equipment, and he won a grant from the Norwegian Parliament and then persuaded other backers to pour huge amounts of money into the project. He borrowed a 400-ton schooner called Fram and recruited folks willing to risk their lives on a journey through the icy Bering Strait. His fellow countrymen cheered him on, imagining he would plant their flag in a land where no one had ever been. But just before setting sail, Amundsen got word that the Americans, Robert Peary and Frederick Cook, had beaten him to the North Pole. And so he asked, now what? I like this story for a few reasons. First, it reminds us about America's long tradition of firsts. It's not just that we were first to the North Pole. We're behind a lot of firsts, including in wireless too. And last week I joined Congressman Doyle, Secretary Raimondo, and Acting Administrator Remley for another Spectrum first. The first time the leadership of the FCC and NTIA collaborated on the NTIA's Spectrum Symposium. And in my remarks, I noted a lot of other American firsts, because time and again, we have led the world with unconventional ideas in wireless. I talked about how we ushered in a new era of spectrum auctions that have unlocked more than $1 trillion in benefits for the American people. And I told the story of how we pioneered the use of unlicensed spectrum that generated more than $500 billion in added economic value in 2017 alone. So that's one reason I like Amundsen's story. The second reason is because his story teaches us a powerful lesson about scientific and technological progress. It reminds us that sometimes you do have to ask, now what? Because when it comes to 5G, well, we've definitely set sail, and we've come a long way in a short time. In fact, 5G networks are rolling out faster than any previous generation of wireless technology. And that's nearly 3 times faster than 4G. But of course, there's more work to do, more focus to bring, and more deployment to come. Because in the United States, the reality remains that most of the country has yet to experience everything that 5G has to offer them. You know, the out there innovations it can deliver are still a ways off because so many of them are not really about connectivity delivered via phones. But 5G is an essential part of unlocking technologies we've been talking about and slowly developing for years. The Internet of Things, telemedicine, virtual and augmented reality, smart transportation networks, smart energy grids, and, I could go on. But I believe that this, in turn, is going to drive the future of industry and expand the potential for machine learning and the possibilities of artificial intelligence. So, Amundsen's story doesn't actually end with learning that the Americans reached the North Pole first. Upon hearing that others had beaten him to it, he decided to change course, literally. He became the first person ever to reach the South Pole. I think there's a story in that pivot that is just as important as noting the American progress first to the North Pole. There's something about being nimble that I think his tale tells, and developing technology requires. It's also something that I want the FCC to keep in mind as we work to ensure 5G service that is fast, secure, resilient, and available everywhere in the country. So once again, let me ask, now what? Well, let me talk to you about the things we're going to do at the FCC to make all of that happen. First and foremost, we are freeing up more spectrum, and especially mid-band spectrum for 5G. As I've been saying for years, I believe pivoting to mid-band spectrum is essential for 5G in the United States. It will foster more competition, wider coverage, and better performance. With more mid-band airwaves, we might also see it bring down spectrum prices because we've seen how not having enough mid-band airwaves can drive up spectrum costs to really unprecedented levels. And over the long term, that has a price because it can make it more expensive to deploy and harder to foster competition. So we're not wasting any time. Just a few weeks from now, we will be kicking off an auction of 100 megahertz of prime midband spectrum in the 3.45 to 3.55 gigahertz band. This auction is important for more reasons than just the midband spectrum it will make available. For starters, it will demonstrate the future viability of coordination zones that require private carriers to depend on other federal actors for information or access. Plus, it will be a bellwether for where we take our spectrum efforts from here after the C-band auction finished as the most expensive auction in our history. And on that front, I want to point out that we just granted more than 5,000 licenses in mid-band airwaves in the C-band, so we can transition to flexible use by the end of the year. On top of that, we've granted more than 270 licenses in the 2.5 gigahertz band to address tribal connectivity needs, and we are tackling the complexities involved in auctioning the remaining spectrum in this band. We look forward to holding that auction after the 3.45 gigahertz auction is completed. Moving up the spectrum chart, we are updating our approach to the 4.9 gigahertz band to maximize public safety availability while exploring options that would improve coordination, spur innovation, drive down costs, and facilitate other uses too. As part of this effort, we are seeking comment on innovative new ideas like priority and preemption for public safety users, new kinds of excess capacity leasing, and shared access models like the Citizens Broadband Radio Service. Finally, we are working on making sure there is a pipeline that continues to channel spectrum from the old to the new. And on that front, I want to note that we are continuing to work with our federal partners to look at the next tranche of mid-band spectrum in the 3.1 to 3.45 gigahertz band. Second, switching from the airwaves to the ground, we are expanding the reach of fiber facilities. That's because our wireless networks will only be as good as the wired connections that help make them work. So I'm particularly pleased that building more broadband is at the heart of the legislative discussions we're having about infrastructure in this country. Third, on the equipment side, we are diversifying what goes into our 5G networks. I believe this is how we will return the United States to a position of strength and leadership in the market for 5G equipment and also drive down build-out costs. Open and interoperable equipment is the future, and we are taking action to ensure that Open RAN technology is being built here and now. Fourth, we are not stopping at equipment diversity. We are also building security and resiliency in our supply chains. We're taking direct action to keep untrusted equipment and vendors out of our networks. With the help of a $1.9 billion appropriation from Congress, we're working on a program to replace this equipment to the extent that it is present in our domestic networks today. And we are making adjustments to the FCC's equipment authorization process to help prevent insecure equipment from ever reaching our shores and to encourage better security practices all across the board. Fifth, on the global stage, we are fostering American leadership in setting the technology standards of the future. I believe it is imperative that the United States government invest the resources necessary to lead in the international standards development process, because when we do, we can lead the world. Greater participation in these efforts means more innovation at international scale and broader support for the democratizing possibilities of access to modern communications. So I have more than doubled the resources we have at the agency working on these issues. One last area where we want to work with CTIA members is better data collection. Earlier this year, the FCC created a broadband data task force to help us understand where broadband is and is not across the country, so we can better target our efforts to close the digital divide. This task force will collect more granular data about 5G deployments for the first time, and we're looking to many of you to partner in this effort. If you do, we'll have better data, and that leads to better policymaking. Good news, already that kind of cooperation is underway. Last month, working with a handful of wireless carriers, the FCC did a test of its new systems for our upcoming broadband mapping efforts. On a voluntary basis, we had those carriers submit information about 4G availability. For the first time ever, we did so with the carriers using the same propagation models, same cell loading factors and the like. That means it's our first map that is a true apples to apples comparison. It's on our website, and I encourage you to check it out because it is light years better than anything the agency has produced before. And it's just the start. There is more good stuff to come. So that's a lot of big ideas in a short amount of time. Freeing spectrum, building broadband, diversifying networks, securing communications, leading internationally, and fixing data. It's clear we still have challenges before us. But I believe the future for 5G has never been brighter. Because like Amundsen, in the United States, we know how to pivot, and we have our eyes on the prize. I think the work I've outlined today will help position you all to succeed. And I believe when you succeed, the nation succeeds. So I want the FCC to work with all of you to help extend the benefits of next-generation wireless services to everyone, everywhere. Thank you.